3 years of marriage and my husband never touched me, not once, not even on our wedding night. I am 62 years old now, living quietly in a small town in Indiana, with my days filled by routine and memories that still visit me when the house grows silent. Most people who know me today would never guess what I carried for decades. This is the story I kept hidden for a long time, not because I wanted to forget it, but because I did not know how to speak it out loud without breaking apart. When this story began, I was 24. It was the early 1990s, and I lived in a modest Midwestern town where everyone knew everyone, and privacy existed mostly in theory. I shared a small house with my widowed mother and my younger sister. My father had passed away suddenly a few years earlier, and since then, life had become about survival, faith, and doing what was considered right. I worked as a library assistant at a local public school. It was not glamorous, but it was steady, and I was proud of it. I was raised to believe that a good woman was patient, modest, and obedient to God's plan. Dating was serious business. Intimacy was sacred. Marriage was forever. That was where I met Daniel. He was 30, quiet, well-dressed, and deeply respected in our church community. He volunteered regularly, spoke softly, and carried himself with an air of discipline that everyone admired. He worked as a bookkeeping clerk for a regional supply office, lived alone, and was known as a man of strong moral values. When he showed interest in me, my mother said I should thank God for such a blessing. Our courtship was careful and restrained. Daniel never crossed a line. He never touched me beyond a brief kiss or a polite embrace. At the time, I believed this was proof of his character, proof that he respected me, proof that he was the kind of man worth waiting for. 6 months later, he proposed in front of our church congregation. I said yes without hesitation. I believed I was stepping into the life I had been taught to want. Our wedding was simple and beautiful. White flowers, familiar hymns, smiling faces. I remember standing beside him, feeling nervous but hopeful, thinking that everything I had waited for was finally about to begin. That night, when the house fell quiet and the door closed behind us, I waited. Daniel said he was exhausted. He said tomorrow would be better. He kissed my forehead, turned off the light, and lay beside me without touching me. I told myself it was normal. I had no idea that tomorrow would never come. The next morning arrived with sunlight and normal conversation, as if nothing unusual had happened. Daniel woke early, dressed neatly, and spoke about errands and church plans. He kissed my cheek the way one kisses a relative, warm but distant. I told myself again that it was only nerves, that marriage was an adjustment, that patience was part of love. Days turned into weeks. Each night, I waited for a moment that never came. Daniel always found a reason to keep distance. He was tired, his head hurt. Work had been stressful. Sometimes he said nothing at all and simply turned his back to me in bed. I lay beside him listening to his breathing, feeling the heat of his body just inches away, wondering how someone could be so close and so unreachable at the same time. After the first month, I finally asked him if something was wrong. He hesitated before answering, his eyes fixed on the floor, and then said he had a medical issue. Nothing serious, he insisted. Just something personal, something embarrassing. He said the doctor told him it would take time, and that pressure would only make it worse. He asked me to be patient with him, so I was. I did what I had been taught to do. I stayed quiet. I prayed harder. I blamed myself. I told myself that being a good wife meant understanding, even when it hurt. I believed that love meant sacrifice, even if no one had warned me how lonely that sacrifice could be. Outside our bedroom, we looked like a normal newlywed couple. We ate dinner together, talked about work, planned grocery lists, and attended church every Sunday sitting side by side. People smiled at us, complimented us, told me how lucky I was. Inside the bedroom, there was an invisible wall I could not cross. At night, I sometimes reached for him, placing my hand gently on his arm or shoulder. Each time, he stiffened slightly and pulled away, whispering an apology that felt rehearsed. Not tonight. Another day. Soon. Soon became a word I learned to fear. As months passed, doubt crept into places I tried to keep holy. I stood longer in front of the mirror, studying my reflection as if searching for an answer written on my own face. I wondered if my body was wrong, if my voice annoyed him, if my presence repelled him in ways I could not see. I bought new nightgowns I felt embarrassed to wear. I fixed my hair before bed. I tried to laugh more, speak less, be softer, be better. Nothing changed. The silence between us grew heavier than any argument could have been. Silence leaves room for the mind to invent cruelty. Mine became very good at it. I told no one, not my mother, not my sister, not the women at church who spoke openly about marriage and children. I smiled when they asked how married life felt. I said it was good. I said we were happy. Each lie settled into my chest like a stone. By the end of the second month, I had learned how to cry without making a sound. I pressed my face into the pillow at night and begged God quietly to fix whatever was broken in me. I never imagined the truth had nothing to do with me at all. By the third month of marriage, the questions began. They came softly at first, wrapped in smiles and concern. My mother asked if I was eating enough. The women at church asked if I was enjoying married life. A few hinted at how quickly children often followed a wedding, especially when God had blessed the union. I learned how to answer without answering. We are taking our time. We want to enjoy being together first. Everything is fine. Each time I said it, I felt something tighten inside my chest. I had no children to speak of, no secret joy to explain the delay, only a silence I was working hard to protect. My mother grew more curious as the months passed. One afternoon, while we folded laundry together, she asked gently if I might be having trouble conceiving. She suggested doctors, vitamins, prayer circles. I nodded and agreed with whatever she said, because telling her the truth felt impossible. I could not imagine explaining that her daughter was married and yet untouched, sharing a bed with a man who did not want her. At church, the pressure was less gentle. An older woman pulled me aside after service and reminded me that a wife's duty was to keep her husband satisfied so he would not be tempted elsewhere. Her words were meant as guidance, but they cut deeply. I went home that day feeling ashamed of a failure I did not understand. Was I doing something wrong? I tried harder. I dressed more carefully when Daniel came home from work. I cooked his favorite meals. I laughed at his jokes, even when they were not funny. I told myself that if I could just become the kind of woman he wanted, the distance would disappear. But Daniel remained unchanged. He was polite, kind, helpful around the house. He never raised his voice, never criticized me, and somehow that made it worse. There was no visible cruelty to point to, no dramatic fight to explain my unhappiness, only a steady absence that no one else could see. At night, when the house was quiet, I began to dread the walk to our bedroom. I changed clothes in the bathroom. He changed in the dark. We lay down side by side like strangers, sharing a train compartment, careful not to touch. The loneliness became physical. I felt it in my stomach when I woke up, in my shoulders when I sat at work, in my throat when someone mentioned marriage with a smile. By our 6th-month anniversary, I finally tried to speak again. I asked Daniel if the doctor had given him any updates. He grew tense immediately. He told me that bringing it up made him feel like a failure. He said my questions only increased his anxiety. He asked me again to be patient, so I stopped asking. I stopped hoping. I started surviving. By the time our first anniversary approached, I no longer felt like a bride. I felt like a guest in my own marriage, waiting for permission to exist. The first real crack did not come from Daniel. It came from someone who had no reason to protect my illusion. Her name was Linda, a new staff member at the school where I worked. She was older than me, outspoken, and recently divorced. During lunch breaks, she spoke openly about life in a way that made some people uncomfortable. I usually stayed quiet, listening more than talking, careful not to reveal too much about myself. One afternoon, as we sat alone in the break room, she studied me for a long moment and then asked a question so direct it took my breath away. "Are you happy?" I smiled automatically and said yes. The lie came easily by then. She did not smile back. She said nothing for a moment, then asked quietly, "Does your husband touch you?" The room felt suddenly smaller. My face burned. I told her it was none of her business, that she was crossing a line. She apologized, but she did not look embarrassed. "I asked because you do not look like a newly married woman," she said calmly. "You look lonely." That word stayed with me long after the conversation ended. Lonely. A few weeks later, my mother insisted I see a doctor. She believed something must be wrong if I was not pregnant yet. I agreed, just to quiet her worries. I told myself it would be routine, nothing more. The appointment changed everything. The doctor was professional and kind, asking routine questions. When she finished the exam, her expression shifted slightly. She asked how long I had been married. I told her. She hesitated, then said something I was not prepared to hear. "Physically, you have never had marital relations." I laughed at first, certain she was mistaken. I told her I was married. She looked at me with concern, not confusion. "I am telling you what your body tells me," she said gently. "You are still a virgin." The word echoed in my head as if it had been spoken in a large, empty room. I left the clinic in a fog. I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel, unable to move. I was married. I shared a bed with my husband every night. And yet, my body carried proof that nothing had ever happened. For the first time, I allowed myself to think what I had refused to consider. Daniel did not have a medical problem. He did not need time. He did not want me. That night, I watched him differently. I noticed how he avoided seeing me undress, how his eyes never followed me, how he flinched at even innocent touch. I replayed months of memories with new understanding, each one tightening the knot in my stomach. I did not confront him. Fear kept me quiet. Fear of the truth. Fear of what it would mean. Fear of realizing my marriage was not delayed, but built on something false from the very beginning. And somewhere deep inside, I sensed that whatever I was about to uncover would change my life forever. Once the doubt entered my mind, it refused to leave. I began noticing things I had once dismissed as meaningless. Daniel's routines were precise, almost rehearsed. He left the house at the same time every morning and returned in the early evening, but Saturdays had changed. He began going out alone, saying he was meeting a colleague from work. He never invited me. He never explained much beyond that. At first, I told myself I was imagining patterns that did not exist. But the absences became regular. Every Saturday afternoon, he dressed carefully, checked his reflection in the mirror longer than usual, and left with an energy I had never seen him bring into our home. He came back late, always calm, always polite, always distant. The phone rang more often too. When it did, he answered in another room, his voice lowered, his sentences shortened. When I asked who it was, he said it was someone from work. I stopped believing him, but I did not say so. One Saturday, fear finally outweighed obedience. I told Daniel I was going to visit my sister. I waited until he left, then followed at a distance. My hands shook the entire time. I felt foolish, desperate, ashamed, but something inside me needed to know. He did not go where I expected. He took a bus to the edge of town, got off near a quiet residential street, and walked toward an apartment building I had never seen before. I stayed across the road, hidden behind a parked car, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might give me away. After some time, he came back out. He was not alone. A man walked beside him, tall and confident, laughing at something Daniel had said. When they reached the entrance, the man placed his hand on Daniel's back in a way that stopped my breath. It was not casual. It was not friendly. Daniel did not pull away. They stood close, speaking softly, their faces inches apart, before parting with a look that carried something I had never seen in my husband's eyes. Affection. I went home before Daniel did. I sat on the couch, staring at the door, replaying the scene over and over until it lost all sense of time. When he finally arrived, he greeted me as if nothing had happened. I asked about his day. He lied easily. That night, I did not sleep. In the days that followed, everything confirmed what I feared. The secret calls, the guarded phone. The way he spoke about that man with warmth he never showed me. And once, while searching for something in the closet, I found magazines hidden in a box. Images of women stared back at me, confusing me more than reassuring me. I realized then that whatever Daniel was hiding, it was not simple. He was living a life that did not include me. And I was married to a man I had never truly known. The truth did not come to me gently. It arrived the way truth often does when it has been delayed too long. One Sunday afternoon, I came home earlier than expected. The house was quiet. Daniel was not there. His jacket lay across the back of a chair, and on the bedroom dresser, his phone rested face down. He had forgotten it. I had never touched his phone before, not once. I believed privacy was sacred, even when my own heart was breaking. But that day, something inside me felt tired of being loyal to a silence that was slowly killing me. My hands trembled as I picked it up. There were several unread messages. One name appeared again and again, a man's name, the same one I had seen weeks earlier. I opened the thread. I wish I had not. I wish I had walked away, but once the door to truth opens, it does not close quietly. The messages were not subtle. They were intimate, tender, explicit in ways my marriage had never been. Words about missing each other, about stolen afternoons, about bodies and desire and longing, about plans that had nothing to do with me. I sat down on the edge of the bed because my legs could no longer hold me. This was not an affair with another woman. This was a relationship, a real one. My husband had a full emotional and physical life, just not with me. I read until my vision blurred, until the words stopped making sense. When I finally put the phone down, I felt hollow. Not angry yet, not screaming, just empty. When Daniel came home, he noticed immediately that something was wrong. He asked if I was all right. I asked him where he had been. He answered calmly, too calmly. I told him to sit down. When I said his name, he looked up, and in that moment I saw fear in his eyes for the first time since I had known him. I told him I had read the messages. The silence that followed was heavy and final. He did not deny it. He did not raise his voice. He simply closed his eyes and whispered that he was sorry. He told me he had always known, that he had tried to pray it away, that he believed marriage would fix him, that marrying me had seemed like the right thing to do, in a world that gave him no other safe choice. As he spoke, something inside me shattered and rearranged itself at the same time. I was not undesirable. I was not broken. I was not unwanted. I was a cover, a shield, a lie he used to survive. The realization hurt more than rejection ever could, because rejection would have meant he had seen me and turned away. This meant he had never truly seen me at all. When he finished speaking, I told him to leave. There was no screaming, no bargaining, just the quiet end of something that had never truly begun. As the door closed behind him, I sank to the floor and cried for the woman I had been, for the years I had lost, and for the truth that, painful as it was, had finally set me free. The days after Daniel left blurred together into something shapeless and heavy. I did not go to work. I did not answer the phone. I stayed in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our marriage with new eyes. Each memory felt altered, tainted by a truth I could no longer escape. The kindness I once treasured now felt like distance. The silence I had defended now felt cruel. I cried until my body ached, and then cried some more when I thought I had nothing left. My mother came to the house on the third day. She knocked, then opened the door when I did not answer. When she saw me, she froze. I must have looked like someone grieving a death, because in a way, I was. She sat beside me and asked where my husband was. For the first time, I told the truth. I told her everything. The untouched marriage, the lies, the other man, the phone, the confession. My voice shook, but I did not stop. When I finished, she did not speak right away. She simply held my hand and prayed quietly, not for answers, but for strength. The news spread quickly after that. In a town like ours, silence never lasts, people whispered. Some looked at me with pity, others with judgment. A few avoided me altogether. I felt exposed and small, as if my private pain had become public property. I stopped attending church. I could not sit in the same pews and pretend my life had not collapsed. Daniel tried to call. I did not answer. Once, he came by the house while my mother was there. He stood in the doorway, looking smaller than I remembered. He said he wanted to talk. I told him there was nothing left to say. The lie was over. Whatever pain remained belonged to me now, and I would carry it alone if I had to. That night, I packed a small bag and went to my mother's house. Leaving that home felt strange. It had been my marriage house, but it had never truly been my home. As I closed the door behind me, I felt grief and relief rise together in my chest. Grief for what I had lost, relief for what I no longer had to endure. The first weeks were the hardest. I questioned everything I believed about myself, about faith, about love. Some nights, anger surged so strong it scared me. Other nights, sadness settled so deep I wondered if I would ever feel whole again. But slowly, something else appeared beneath the pain. Clarity. I began to understand that the problem had never been my worth. It had been someone else's fear, someone else's lie. And for the first time since my wedding day, I felt something close to freedom. Time did not heal me quickly, but it did heal me honestly. The first year after the separation was about survival. I focused on small things. Waking up, going to work, eating meals, even when I had no appetite, breathing through moments when memories hit without warning. I moved back in with my mother for a while, not because I was weak, but because I finally allowed myself to stop pretending I was strong all the time. I changed jobs a year later, taking a position as an administrative assistant at a small community college. It was a new environment, filled with people who did not know my story, who did not look at me with pity or curiosity. That anonymity felt like mercy. I started dressing differently, not to impress anyone, but to recognize myself again. I laughed more. I slept better. Slowly, I began to feel like a person instead of a wound. Therapy played a role I never expected. In those quiet sessions, I learned something that changed everything. What happened to me was not my failure. It was the collision of fear, repression, and silence. Understanding that did not excuse what Daniel had done, but it released me from carrying blame that was never mine to begin with. Several years later, I met Thomas. He was not dramatic. He did not arrive like a miracle. He was simply kind, steady, and honest. A man with flaws he did not hide, and emotions he did not bury. From the beginning, I told him my story. I did not want secrets anymore. He listened without trying to fix me. He did not rush me. He let me set the pace. For the first time in my life, intimacy felt safe. We married quietly. No big ceremony. No performance. Just two people choosing truth over appearance. We built a life rooted in conversation, respect, and trust. We had children. We had arguments. We had ordinary days that felt extraordinary, simply because they were real. Thomas passed away years later, after a long illness. Losing him hurt deeply, but it was a clean pain, not the confusion I once lived in. I grieved him knowing I had been loved honestly, not as a cover or a compromise. Now, at 62, I live alone, but I am not lonely. I have children, grandchildren, friends, and peace. When I look back at those 3 years of my first marriage, I no longer see wasted time. I see a lesson that reshaped my life. Here is what I learned. Silence is not virtue when it destroys you. Patience is not holy when it enables a lie. Love cannot exist without truth. If something feels wrong, it usually is. If you feel unseen, unheard, untouched in a marriage, you are not asking for too much. You are asking for what should already be there. And if you are living a lie out of fear of judgment, know this: the truth will surface eventually. It always does. When it does, it will hurt far more people than honesty ever would have. I do not carry hatred for Daniel. I understand the world he lived in and the fear that shaped his choices. But understanding does not mean accepting the damage those choices caused. Compassion should never come at the cost of someone else's life. My story is not about blame. It is about liberation. The truth broke my marriage, but it gave me my life. And if you are listening to this, feeling that quiet ache of something being wrong, trust yourself. You deserve more than silence. You deserve love that sees you, chooses you, and meets you in the light. That is the real lesson of my story.